This is the Balancing Act by Security Compass, your guide to going fast while staying safe in today's digital world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our podcast today. Our guest speaker is Lynn Robert Carter, who is a consultant and former Carnegie Mellon professor. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
That's great. So let's just dive right into this. We've only got a few minutes. And Lynn, I want to start to talk about this idea of security training. There are a lot of companies out there that are offering security training products, and the intent is to go in and try and build resiliency and try and proactively get ahead of this curve that we're calling software security. Are we hitting the mark? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And in some ways, I really wish we had something like Consumer Reports for training organizations, because there's such a wide range of offerings and what's a businessman supposed to do? I'm in the business of writing software or solving a client's problem. What do I know about going out and assessing the value of a security training firm? And so that's a real problem area, it seems to me. One of the key things, though, that I think that we need to focus on is what is it about training that you feel is important for your organization to be successful? Because if you're not really clear about what it is this training is trying to accomplish, then it doesn't really matter what training you get, because you just check the box, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of times when I have conversations as well, I think there are different levels. On the one hand, there's a compliance level. Did we send our team through a particular course, as an example? However, is this sustainable? Is it something that in the long term people are learning? We've got behavioral changes taking place. And I think that's, trying to fit the right training to the right problem becomes a really key part in all of this.
Well, I think that's really a good way of looking at it. From my perspective, I fall back to a lot of the work that I did with the military and their notion that you should train the way you're going to, in their case, the way you're going to fight, and consider the competition in the marketplace right now. A lot of it feels like fighting, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But the point is this a talking head on a screen and a multiple choice quiz at the end? Or are you actually going to be doing something during the training that relates to the kinds of stuff that you're going to be asked to do on the job? Because there's two very different kinds of experiences. Both of them can be useful, but you have to ask yourself, why are we doing this? What is the goal? What is the outcome? And more importantly, once you've identified what you think you want to accomplish, how are you going to assess the extent to which the outcome is being achieved? And do you have a relationship with this training firm that says, look, when we put this together to start with, I said to you, this is what I need. Now is the time for us to talk about how we adjust what we've been experiencing, because we aren't quite where I need to be yet.
It's interesting you bring that up. In some of the discussions that I've been having, even the whole idea of security is evolving. And let me explain. Here we've got cybersecurity as a really important aspect of creating software today. But at the same time, there's a life cycle in this, right? If you look at DevOps, eventually this stuff needs to get attested in some way. And so we're now starting to look at risk teams, compliance teams entering into all of this. So what are your thoughts when it comes to creating training that is going to accomplish a particular need? As we get more mature with this, should we be looking at training that goes beyond just what technical teams do?
Oh, well, that's absolutely correct. Let's face it, there have been many times where the technical people have come up to management and said, we have a problem, and management talks you out of it. They just have a certain power over you, And so from my perspective, I think that, again, you need to focus on that outcome and ask yourself, who are the people that influence employee success doing what needs to be done the way it needs to be done? And when bad things happen, is it because they didn't know what they were supposed to do? They didn't know how to do it, or they weren't given the opportunity to do it? So what is actually the root cause of the security problems in the organization, or in your mind, the risks that you think you're going to be facing in your organization that's causing you to think that you need some training. And so I'd look at it from that perspective, but I think you're raising some excellent points.
Yeah, I found one of the gaps, like let's take a look at like some of the lists, for example, that are out in the industry, right? We have an OWASP top 10 list. Tends to be very technically focused, but once you get into it, the nuances around that would imply that you're having to talk to a number of different people. We may go in and say, well, we need to take care of SQL injection. And then what's the context of that? Is it all of our systems? Is it just the critical systems that are there? And so I think to your point about what are we trying to accomplish here, there's a duality that almost exists. On the one hand, we're trying to raise the maturity of our teams so they can execute more effectively. But on the other hand, there's a certain business value that's coming out of this. Are we going in there and offering this value and spending time on those things that are most important to the business? In your experience, are you finding that this duality exists, both the business enablement as well as the risk management from a training standpoint?
I wish I could say that was there. These groups were talking, but my experience has been that there seems to be an incredible Grand Canyon between the technical people and the executive people. And I talked to a friend of mine who just finished a master's degree in cybersecurity studies at a well-known university on the East Coast. And her complaint was that after this training, she still is not even invited to the discussions, let alone having actual input to them. So we need to make sure that both the technical people know how to talk to leaders and managers about security issues and risks and training needs. And similarly, we need the technical, the managerial people, the business people, to understand that security isn't something you just bolt on after you start getting a huge market share. And this is where the DevOps point that you made earlier is so important. What is it that distinguishes our product from the marketplace? And how do you get that into your product? And this idea that, well, our product really needs to be secure for this and this and this reason, and we're going to delay thinking about that until we have a bunch of customers. How brain dead is that? It seems to me that we want to be thinking about these critical business advantages that we're going to bring to the marketplace because we have thought about security and these other really important quality attributes at the beginning and got the right people involved to create an environment where people get the training and the skill development and the expertise. Let's be very clear. Having a bunch of trained people doesn't mean anything if they can't actually do it, okay? And so this is why some of these like maybe apprenticeship type programs or some of these workshop type things, if it's an online video thing with multiple choice quiz at the end, I'm not comfortable with that for the most part. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be, I think you can do it virtually, but you actually have to be doing the kinds of things that are the root cause of the security issues that you have.
It's interesting you bring this up because now, we're just about out of time, but I'm going to try and throw in a question here. This means that we're not just discussing what happens for the technical teams, but we're also now implying that we need the business teams to understand a little bit more about security as well. What are your thoughts?
I think that's exactly right. And this is why one of the concepts from DevOps that we've been advocating so much is this idea of these cross-functional teams. You need to make sure that you get the right kinds of people working together because you can't expect everybody to know everything. And so getting some of your executives and senior leaders, having some connections to some technical people. They don't have to work together all the time, but when something pops up, you get a phone call and say, hey, Lynn, I have a question for you. And bounce it off of your favorite tech person to help you think through what kind of training is appropriate and why, I think would go a long ways to accomplishing what we're looking for.
That's great. Wonderful. Well, Lynn, thank you very much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Take care, sir.
Bye.
Can't get enough of the balancing act? Make sure to check out our website at www.securitycompass.com and be sure to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts for more episodes.